Today I'm going to show you all of my collection of Terraria videos that explain what to do and what you can do in the evil biomes in Terraria. So this is going to be a long video that you can have on in the background while you're playing Terraria yourself. I hope you enjoy, and some of the advice you will already know and some of it might be new to you. So hopefully it helps you in your Terraria adventure. Let's go. Today I want to show you guys how to stop the spread of corruption to your base in Terraria. Corruption or Crimson is going to move all of your NPCs out of the base, and it's going to stop them from being able to live there, which is a pain, especially since you don't want to have to make a new home. As you can see, we have a corrupted, hallowed desert here. We need to find out how far the corruption has actually spread. It'll usually be underground, so go into the map and have a look to see if you can find any demonite. And if you find some, that means you have to use this technique to the left of that demonite, if the base, of course, is on the left of the demonite or of the corruption. And this works, of course, with Crimson too, so it's not just for corruption. We're just going to try and stop the corruption from getting to our base. Now, how does this work? Corruption can't pass a certain amount of blocks. Usually corruption spreads between blocks and background, and that is key. If you make a gap of about 5 to 9 blocks, then you will stop the corruption from getting across from the corrupted side to the non-corrupted side. So usually I use dynamite as my main marker. You probably don't need to make a hole as big as dynamite will make, but I usually use it just to be sure, because there's nothing worse than using, for example, a 5-block technique when you're digging, but one of your blocks or one of your areas is only 4 blocks wide, and then the corruption jumps across. So I just use dynamite. Now, of course, I am kind of mid-game at the moment in this, so I have wings and everything, which makes it a little bit easier for me to do this, and I can afford the dynamite too. If you can't afford dynamite, I will show you what to do later. I usually use my platforms like this at the beginning. I hang on with my hook and I just drop the dynamite up below me. If you wait about a millisecond or half a second between clicks, the dynamite won't blow up all at the same time, and it will start to make a ripple effect down, which makes it a lot quicker. Also, I have good armor here, so it's a lot easier for me to do this with good armor. You can do this as early as you want in your playthrough, but the earlier you do it, the harder it'll be, simply because of how many enemies there are going to be. I'd recommend if you do it pre-hard mode, at least the enemies won't be as difficult. But make sure you have a good hook so you can hook onto the walls and stay away from danger. Maybe even have a half decent summon as well. That'll help you fight off the enemies. Maybe the imp, for example. When it comes to being able to afford dynamite, if you can't afford dynamite early on, I'd recommend using bombs. So the way this works is the corruption generally won't spread past the cavern lair. I still go all the way down to hell just in case. So once you get to the cavern lair, you can probably start using bombs. It'll save you on dynamite, unless you, like me, can afford all the dynamite that you want. So start using bombs, and that way you'll make probably a 5-block wide gap, and that should be enough, especially since there's no walls in the cavern lair. The reason why you kind of need it to be a little bit wider near the top is because the walls will allow the corruption to spread across from block to block. Down here, there are no walls in the background, so the only way the corruption can spread is across from one block to the other. Now, I'm going to go back to using dynamite in a second, simply because bombs are good and everything, but they're a lot slower, and they bounce a lot more, which means it's a lot harder to get good aim when it comes to blowing this up. And also, as I said, I could afford dynamite, so there's no point in using bombs. Only use bombs if you absolutely have to. I would not recommend doing this with a pickaxe. You will be here all day, and unless you have a lot of time to do something like this, that is going to take way too long. So make sure you use bombs or dynamite. If you do dig, best of luck, but it's probably going to take about 3 or 4 goes to get a 5-block wide hole. As I said, I usually go all the way down to hell. You don't need to do that, but I usually do. It's a free elevator anyway, so you might as well. But yeah, this is going to stop the corruption from getting to the other side from underneath. Now, as you can see, all of this area is hallowed. That's perfectly fine. The hallowed area is classified as an evil area, but I mean, it's not that bad, to be honest. It's one of my favorite biomes in the game, and you can get a lot of good stuff from the hallowed biome, and your NPCs can live in the hallowed biome no problem. So it's only the corruption and crimson you really need to worry about. And I believe that since this area is completely hallowed, I don't think the corruption would have gotten across anyway, but it would have gotten across near the top where we saw that demonite ore. So we have to be very careful not to allow that to spread. As I said already, when you do this, you're going to have no risk of your NPCs having to move out of your main base, which means you're not going to have to constantly rebuild the damn thing. And especially when you're getting ready for the bosses, the mechanical bosses, and Plantera and Golem, the last thing you want to do is have to rebuild an entire base again, just because the corruption managed to get there. And the worst case scenario is if all of your NPCs have to move out because you have no base available, and then you get an eclipse. It's like when one of the events happens during this, it's really painful. So I'd highly recommend getting one of these made early as possible. I usually do it post Skeletron, pre Wall of Flesh. The enemies tend to be a little bit easier. At that stage, you just have a small bit more money. For dynamite, you can use sticky dynamite as well, of course. And another thing is, the corruption really doesn't spread until you start hard mode anyway. So you don't really need to worry about it until you start hitting altars. So I'd almost recommend doing this just before you fight Wall of Flesh. But you can do it whenever you want. And as you can see, I'm doing it now after the first mechanical boss. So it hasn't hurt me to do it yet. The NPCs still haven't moved out. And we're almost at hell. As you can see, we have the lava there on the left and the right. Sometimes I stop at this point if I already have a elevator, which I do on this planet. But just to make it complete, I'm going to go all the way down to hell, because corruption can't spread across the hell background. As you can see, the brimstone or whatever it's called background in the background. Actually, you could tell me if you know the name of the wall behind me right now. You can let me know in the comment section what that's actually called. It'll be a fun fact about Terraria. So it looks like we've almost made it now. Pretty much made it to hell. The background has ended, and hell is one of the best places to farm in Terraria. So we're going to have another way down now, right next to the base. That's the last block. We made it. GG's. We managed to do it mostly with dynamite, a tiny bit with bombs just to show it off. And now we're going to go back. So as you will see, we have now got a hole that is also doubles as an elevator that blocks the crimson or the corruption from getting across to our lovely green area where our NPCs are. Early game or pre-hard mode, I would recommend making one on each side so that the crimson or corruption can't get across to your main base. And as you can see, my NPCs are protected from both sides in this playthrough. Today I want to answer the question, do demon altars and crimson altars spread corruption and crimson in Terraria? And the answer is no. You can destroy as many of these things as you want. And this was changed ages ago in an update from Relogic, but I get asked this question so much in the comment section, and I actually get this comment a lot, that I decided I'm going to make a video about it and show you guys that it actually doesn't increase corruption or crimson. You can destroy as many of these as you want, make your world full of hard mode ore, and you don't have to worry about the spread of corruption or crimson. So as most of you know, you need the pawn hammer to destroy these things, and you get the pawn hammer from Wall of Flesh. And the pawn hammer, pretty much, if you don't have the Wall of Flesh killed by the time you try to destroy these things, they'll actually to make you take damage. As you can see there, the demon altars are still usable as crafting stations for certain items like boss spawners. And real quickly, I'm just going to show you how much corruption I have in this world. Using the Dryad, it is 25% corruption, and we're going to destroy a bunch of these and see what happens. We've already destroyed 3 before you can see this footage, and then we're going to destroy a couple of more, and we're going to see if it has gone from 25% to a higher number. And as you can see, there is hard mode ore still spawning even after destroying. I probably destroyed about 8 or 9 of these altars while I was looking around for them, and after 8 or 9, has the percentage gone up? That is the big question. Has the corruption spread? Has the crimson spread? Obviously not in this world, but in general. The answer is big fat no. I can already predict it because it doesn't corrupt the world anymore. 25% corruption. So destroy as many of these things as you want. Today I want to show you guys how to make your own biomes in Terraria. So usually, like I'm doing here, you want to have a nice green area for your biome. You can pretty much do this anywhere, including up in the sky as well, but I prefer to do it in a normal biome area, and that way you're going to keep the spawns down of your enemies that are going to be attacking you while you're trying to build the biome, and also you are going to be able to see your effects a little bit sooner. So each biome that you can create in Terraria has a certain amount of blocks that you need. And the hallowed biome, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes, is also manageable in this game. You can also do the snow biome and the sand biomes, for example. But when it comes to which ones are more practical, I'd recommend sticking with the even stone blocks for the corruption biome, or the crimtane blocks or the crimson blocks for the crimson biome, or the pearl stone blocks for the hallowed biome. Because if you're trying to make a snow biome, it takes over 1,000, I think it's over 3,500 blocks to make a snow biome. So the sand biome and snow biome are not worth it. They take way too long unless you're absolutely desperate for a snow biome in your playthrough. Now, usually when it comes to these biomes, I like to have at least 300 blocks. For some biomes, like the hallowed biome, you don't need to have 300 blocks, but 300 is the magic number for me that I usually try and go for. And sometimes you can even, if you want to make 100% sure, just have 350 blocks for the corruption biome, because you technically don't need that many blocks to make a biome, but you never know when something has been changed. Sometimes they change things in Terraria and there's a higher requirement sometimes, and even if they don't change the biomes, you just want to make sure that you use enough so that you see the difference in the background behind. Now, as you can see, I have changed this into a corruption biome now. I'll start to get the corruption enemies, and I will also start to get the extra spawn rates from having a corruption biome. Now, this is great if I want to try and farm for chests that give you the corruption key, for example, or if I'm looking to get other items from the corruption that are required. However, when you're in the late game, you probably don't need to create yourself a corruption biome if you are trying to farm for something, unless you're trying to farm for the key, really. So I would almost recommend that you focus mostly on the hallowed biome. Now, what I'm doing here is, instead of just replacing the blocks with pearl stone, I just want to show you that you can remove the biome that you just created by taking away enough blocks. So if I take away enough of these blocks that I put down here, then the background will change back to normal, and the corruption biome has gone. As you can see, the corruption actually did start to spread while I was making this biome too. So corruption spreads pretty quickly. So if you're making a biome, you might want to make sure that you want to keep it. It's going to be a bit of a pain for me to try and get rid of this, but I will do it just for the sake of showing off that it is possible. When it comes to the hallowed biome, as I said, you need a lot less blocks for hallowed biome, and it's a lot more useful. And obviously you can do the same thing with the crimson biome. The crimson biome is the same as corruption biome, it's just you use crimson blocks instead. And the blocks, I like, when it comes to the biomes that I create, I like to make sure that they're embedded in the ground pretty much, or embedded in the area. So as you can see, I have a lot of corruption in the mud or in the dirt blocks around me. I like to try and embed it properly so it spreads correctly. Because if you're going to be making a biome, you might as well do it correctly. You can always use the Clentaminator later if need be. So as I said, here we go with the pearlstone blocks. Pearlstone blocks to make the hallowed biome, to give you the hallowed biome spawns. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm in theory going to tell you that if you have enough corrupted blocks in an area where you put down enough pearlstone blocks, you will have the pearlstone or the hallowed enemies, but you will still have the extra spawn rate from the corruption. Now, I noticed that I was still getting corruption enemies even when I was putting down these pearl blocks, and I was also getting a slightly increased spawn rate. So as I said, that might not be 100% accurate. You guys can let me know in the comment section why this was happening in the first place. But I almost felt like I was getting an increased spawn rate and I was getting corruption enemies from having corruption blocks in the area. It was very interesting. So as you can see, I already started to get some of the hallowed enemies already. Now, because it's raining and because I changed the background already, you can't see the hallowed in the background, but as long as the hallowed enemies are spawning, it is technically a hallowed biome. For some reason, I'm still getting the ocean biome in the background, and that is completely fine. As long as the enemies that you want to spawn are spawning, you're in the right biome, because all you care about is getting the stardust and of course the unicorns, and if you really want to, the werewolves as well, so you can start farming for other late game items. And just going to fill in this little gap here. Usually what I like to do is I like to have some blocks off the screen in order for my enemies or the creatures to spawn on the side of the map. And then they run in and then I can kill them while I'm standing in the center. So as you can see here, that's exactly what I've done. I have the blocks stretching out, and as long as there's more than, I believe, 200 on screen, maybe 150, you can get away with having a hallowed biome. And then you can start farming unicorns. So thank you very much for watching today's video. I will be back in the next video and I'll be showing you what to do with a lot of the enemies in this biome. There's a lot you can do with the hallowed biome, and it's a very useful biome to have. So we're going to do some farming here. Today I want to show you guys how to get Souls of Light in Terraria. And Souls of Light are easy to get if you're just looking for one or two to progress the game, but a lot of people are unaware of how to actually get Souls of Light in large amounts. And pretty much you just need to make a farm in the hallowed biome in the underground cavern area. And that's it really. You just kill enemies and they'll drop Souls of Light. You can do this in the naturally occurring hallowed biome. You can make your own, which I've done here, and I can show you how to do that. And you can do it in Hell, because Hell is a very easy place to farm for souls in Terraria. But also, it can be a bit more dangerous to farm in Hell, so you're probably better off making your own biome in the underground cavern area. So, what you do is you get pearlstone blocks and you make a mob farm. If you want to know how to make a mob farm, I have a video on it already. And pretty much you just stay in this area, kill enemies, and they'll drop Souls of Light. Souls of Light are very useful for creating many things, including spawners for some of the mech bosses and some of the events that happen in Terraria. But probably one of the most important reasons to have lots of Souls of Night is for the key. And if you get the Key of Light, you can get the Daedalus Stormbow, and then you can progress on till the rest of the game, or you could progress past Plantera at least. And you don't need Daedalus Stormbow for all of the mech bosses and for Plantera, but it is very, very useful to have. And actually, you could even use the Daedalus Stormbow for the Martian Madness event, so it's useful for very, very large amounts of Terraria. Anyway, as you can see while we're yapping here, there is lots of souls floating around on the screen. And obviously I'm going to go pick them up. And make sure you pick them up regularly. Actually, don't farm constantly because they can disappear if you have too many items in one small area, and stuff will start to despawn. But there isn't enough items on screen right now for anything to despawn here, so it's fine. And yeah, pretty much we're just going to start picking up some of these, and we're going to use them to create keys of light. And we're good. If you don't know how to use the key of light, you put the key of light into an empty chest, and then it becomes a hallowed mimic, and then the hallowed mimic can be killed for the Daedalus Stormbow, one of the best items in the game. Speaking of which, if you are doing this farm setup, try not to move away from your computer. This isn't AFK. One of the reasons why is there are enemies that can get through walls, and if you're very unlucky, and it's very low chance that this is going to happen, if you disturb a hallowed mimic, which would be just off the screen, it will kill you and you won't be able to get away from it. So try not to AFK farm for Souls of Light. Try and stay ready to fight anything that goes through walls. And that's particularly when you're in the hallowed. You can, if you're in the surface, it's fine generally. And if you're not using like dart traps, it's fine. But you just don't want to risk it. Some other things that you can get from here is the hallowed key, of course. And you can get the Rod of Discord, which is a very rare drop and a very, very useful item. So I'd recommend doing your Souls of Light in the Cavern Lair, like I'm doing here. And that will just help you get some other key items in Terraria as well. And you can even get some items like the mirror from Medusa, if you're looking for that, of course. You have to be near a marble biome for that. She's not going to spawn naturally. You have to kind of put it next to a marble biome. Also try and have a nice good flat area as well, so that you don't have to constantly be having enemies spawn underneath you. You are going to get some enemies spawning underneath you here, but it's not going to be anywhere near as bad if you make a nice flat platform. And some enemies are going to spawn above you as well. Today I want to show you guys how to purify your world of corruption, hallowed, and crimson. So I was trying to get the Good Riddance achievement, and I didn't realize until I used it how important the Biome Side Potion is to see where the corruption and the crimson and the hallowed are. So what you're going to need is you're going to need the Clentaminator and green solution, which is something I show you how to get in a previous video. And you're going to need the Biome Side Potion, which I'll show you how to make in a few moments. And you're going to go around the world and you're going to purify all of corruption and crimson and hallowed that you can find. So it's very difficult to do without the Biome Potion. That's the key to this. Something that you can use as well is the drill containment unit, and that helps you to mine around the world easier. And I will show you how to do that in a further video that I'm going to make in the future. So let me show you what the world looks like without the potion first. As you can see, you can't really see any corruption. I mean, you might be able to spot a couple of blocks here or there, but you've no idea how much corruption there is. The danger scent potion that's on at the moment is showing you the spider webs. That's not the corruption. And this is what it looks like with the Biome Side Potion. All of that corruption that you didn't see because you didn't know it was there, and even the individual blocks that are required for the achievement as well. If you want to get rid of all the corruption in your world, you have to get rid of every single block. You can't have any left over. So that is going to be very difficult without this guy. So let me show you how to make the Biome Side Potion real quick, so you have everything that you need. To get the Biome Side Potion, you need water bottles, you need grass seeds from the Dryad, you need moon glow from getting the plant at nighttime when the moon is shining, you need blink root, which is pretty abundant, and the fire blossom, which is from hell. And you mix all of those together to get the Biome Side Potion. It's actually quite a simple recipe, so you shouldn't have any issues getting that at any stage. And yeah, there you go. You can make the Biome Side Potion pretty quickly, pretty easily, and all of the ingredients will be very easy to get for you. The moon glow is a bit of a pain because you have to wait till nighttime, and the fire blossom you have to go to hell, but other than that, it's pretty simple. As you can see, all of this was corrupted or hallowed, And I need to get rid of all of this in order to get the achievements. So we're talking about a really useful method to see where the corruption is, or the hallowed, or the crimson, of course. And you need to get rid of all these vines as well that you might see on your screen, where if you have any vines left over, any of these little ones, they will spread the hallowed. So you need to get rid of those as well. Make sure you get every single bit, because the Dryad is very picky and she's going to want you to get rid of absolutely everything. And today I want to show you guys how to remove corruption from your world in Terraria. So in order to do that, you need to have the Steampunker. The Steampunker is an NPC that is available after you kill one of the mechanical bosses. And the Steampunker will sell the Clentaminator and green solution. So as you can see, I have the Steampunker here. It's the person in the top hat. And you don't need to have her in the jungle, but in this instance, I have her in the jungle with the merchant. So you need to go into her inventory, obviously, and you need to pick up the Clentaminator and green solution. Now, the Clentaminator is quite expensive, 3 platinum, and that's in an expert world, just to be sure you know the difference. It'll be probably more expensive in a master world, and it might be a little bit cheaper in a non-expert world. So buy yourself some green solution and use it as an ammo. She also sells other solutions, but it's the green solution we're going to be looking for. And this is probably the more expensive way to remove corruption from your world. So I highly recommend controlling the spread of corruption. I have a video on how you can control the spread or stop the spread of corruption in the first place. But if your corruption gets out of hand and you're in hard mode, after you kill one of the mech bosses and you have enough platinum, I recommend this strategy. So pretty much I have the jungle here, as you can see, and I'm going to be moving over to a corrupted area. And all you got to do is simply use the Clentaminator on the corrupted area to turn it into its previous biome. And as you can see, the corruption is very close to the jungle here, so it's a bit dangerous. I want to get rid of some of this right away. So you just start spraying. Now you can spray away, you don't need to be conservative, but just so you know, it is quite expensive to buy lots of green dyes. So if you have a very large area, maybe tap left click instead of holding it down like I am here. As you can see, you can bring back some of the desert from the corruption. The problem with corruption, however, is it goes down underground. As you can see, the walls are corrupted. And that's actually how corruption spreads. So if you don't take care of the corrupted walls underneath the corrupted area that you're trying to remove, the corruption will just come back again. So you really need to go down and get rid of the corruption from below. Now, technically, the area that I'm in on the left is a designated corrupted area. So you probably won't ever be able to get rid of corruption fully from there. I'd be very surprised. Well, I suppose you could get it to a certain point. There is an achievement for getting rid of corruption after all, but it would take a long time. This technique is mostly for corrupted areas that have become corrupted rather than spawned as corrupted when you created the world. And you can, as you can see, you can get rid of corruption that is on the way over to the jungle, and you can get rid of corruption that is on the desert. And if you leave any of the pockets of corruption over, unfortunately, they will continue to spread again, and you will have the same issue later on. So you really should try and focus on getting rid of all the corruption in all these little pockets that you see here, just to stop it from spreading. And anytime the corruption respreads, you can always use this technique again to get rid of it. So don't worry, you can pretty much get rid of any corruption even if it starts to spread again. And or you could start to make it so that the corruption can't spread across your world using the techniques that I showed you in the previous video. And the previous video, as I mentioned, is a lot cheaper than using the Cthulhu. Cthulhu 3 platinum, it's a lot, especially if you don't have a money farm like I do. And if you don't use money farms, if you're just having a normal playthrough. So I'd highly recommend just controlling the spread rather than having to remove it when it's already there. So as you can see here, just getting really deep into the corrupted zone to get rid of all of this corruption that is taking over my desert. And of course, when you remove corruption, you change the enemies that are going to spawn in there. You change the spawn rate as well. For example, a non-corrupted desert is going to have a lower spawn rate than a corrupted desert, but then you won't have corrupted enemies anymore. So it depends on what you're trying to farm for, and it depends on what you're trying to get. As you can see here, you can also get rid of the Hallow. Now your NPCs can technically live in the Hallow even though it is classified as corruption. And oh yeah, this technique works on Crimson as well, of course. It works on all different types. But I usually wouldn't get rid of the Hallow if I wasn't using it to demonstrate how this item works, because I think the Hallow is very good for farming. It's great for getting money. You can get holy arrows from here. You can get the blessed apple from the unicorns. It's pretty useful to keep the Hallow. But if you ever did want to get rid of the Hallow, as you can see, just the exact same thing again. You can take it out from pretty much the root cause of the Hallow. And one thing you can't get rid of is Pearlstone blocks, as you can see there. And you can't get rid of the crystal shards either, which is technically a good thing because you want the crystal shards. But just so you know, crystal shards are exempt from this. Now, one other thing I would do is if you're having a really bad time with corruption, you can go all the way down to the bottom of the world, pretty much, to hell or whatever, and start working your way up. If you see any corruption from the hell area up, then you get rid of that with the Clentaminator too. Now, corruption doesn't usually spread all the way down this far. Obviously, you can have corrupted mud blocks and so down here. And when you get corrupted mud blocks or corrupted stone down here, you can get some free items. For example, Deathweed can spawn in hell if you have corrupted blocks on your hell bridge. But in general, the blocks around here don't tend to become corrupted, so a lot of your corruption spread isn't really coming from this part of your world. Anyway, let me know guys what you think of today's video. Let me know if you're having any issues with the corruption or the Crimson or the Hallow, and let me know how you got rid of it. If you have any questions for me, of course, I am going to be in the comment section, so leave a comment if you have anything you want to know. This works, as far as I know, on all versions of the game from console to PC, so you shouldn't have to worry about any of that. I'm pretty sure the minor changes or differences would be the price of the Clentaminator itself. Today I'm going to show you guys how to get the corruption key in Terraria. Corruption key is going to open up the corruption chest in the dungeon, and you're going to get the Scourge of the Corruptor. So real quick, create yourself a mob farm in the corruption biome. Make the mob farm out of corruption blocks. And I suppose you could use this video as background noise while you try and farm this item. Let me show you and tell you about what I'm doing here. So first of all, the Scourge of Corruptor is quite good. It's one of the top items that you can get from the keys in the game. And you can only get these post Plantera. So make sure you have Plantera killed first before you try and open any of these chests. Otherwise, you'll be too early. I've actually created my corruption biome in a very unique place. It seems to be very weird. Whenever I try and make corruption biome or a crimson biome in this area, it always seems to act differently from every other biome in the game. I wonder how it works. We're in the dungeon, and specifically we're in the little sand area, the little desert area next to the dungeon. And it seems like I'm getting a lot of normal enemies here. I'm not just getting corruption enemies. I'm also getting sand enemies as well, of course. Just a quick one. The key can be dropped by anything in the biome that drops keys. Sorry, that drops coins. And it doesn't have to be a corruption or a crimson enemy. It can literally be any enemy as long as you're in the corruption area. And if you've killed the torch god and you put down a torch, and your torch is a corruption torch, then you know you're in the right biome. I'm actually using water candles right now in order to increase the spawn. And I'm also using battle potions to increase the spawn. And right now, in front of you, I'm actually using Blood Moon to increase the spawn even further. So we are getting all sorts of enemies to try and drop this key. Now, just to be clear, I don't normally build these next to the dungeon. This would probably be one of the last places I'd recommend that you put it, but it's completely up to yourself. The key will drop as long as you're in the corruption biome. I personally would put this item or this biome into a desert biome that is away from the dungeon, or the snow biome that is obviously away from the dungeon as well. That's probably your best bet. Put it either in the snow biome or put it in the desert biome that's not near the dungeon. You have the benefits of collecting other items. If you do that, you can collect snow items, snow biome items, and you can collect the items from the desert too. And make sure you go out of your area, out of your mob farm regularly to try and see if you have managed to get the drop, because there is an item limit in Terraria, and oh, looks like we've actually managed to get a drop over here. And it sometimes drops off screen too, so go off screen as regularly as you can. So this is what it looks like. Sometimes you can leave the world and come back in just to reset the drops on screen, because as I said, there are drop limits, and if you end up missing the key, if you don't check regularly enough, it can despawn. So be very careful if it has spawned off your screen and you don't even know it's bloody there. And this is what the chest looks like when you actually go into the dungeon. And we're going to use the key on the chest and get the Scourge of the Corruptor, which is a pretty good item. It's very good for crowd control. So it's great for the Lizard Temple if you want to get it before trying to kill Golem. Or if you're trying to do like Solar Eclipse, or if you're trying to do Martian Madness, this item is pretty decent. So I would recommend getting it alongside the other items that you can get from the keys. And if there is a key to be found in Terraria, you can be sure that we have a video on it as well. Today I want to find out if you can spawn Brain of Cthulhu on the surface in Terraria. So we're going to use the Bloody Spine to spawn him. It looks like you have to have the crimson background to spawn him. And now there he comes, but he is of course on the surface, and it doesn't look like he's enraged in any way. Good for us, because sometimes when you take a boss out of their biome or onto the surface, they sometimes go enraged. It looks like when you go out of the crimson, he retreats back into his crimson biome. Now, I do know that the Brain of Cthulhu can despawn if there's too much distance between you and him, so I'm guessing that you have to be on the surface in the crimson, and if you move into a different biome, then you are going to have him retreat until he despawns, and then you're going to have to respawn him. Now, just a couple of little tactics here for this boss fight. I'm using the mini shark and I'm using normal bullets. But the most important thing for the Brain of Cthulhu, if you didn't know already, is the slime mount, in my opinion, because the enemies can't really attack you from below. You have to be careful not to take fall damage, of course, because if they knock you too high into the air, you're going to take fall damage from falling too high, and you're actually going to see that right there. I shouldn't have removed the slime mount there just before I took all that damage, but hopefully it'll be okay. And one of the things you can do with Brain of Cthulhu, if you didn't know as well, is you can let one of his little minions alive until you fully heal before you kill it, and he won't enter his next phase until you've killed them all. So if there's only one or two left and you're just kind of like half health, or you're looking to get a bit of a healing in, just keep one or two of these guys alive, and then you'll be able to heal up, kill it, and then enter his next phase. There's another trick you can do with the slime mount when you get to his next phase as well, which I'll show you. But for now, let's wait until our character is healed, while also slowly chipping away at these guys. Luckily enough, they drop a couple of hearts as we go, and they drop some tissue samples as well, which is great. So once we've killed the last couple of these, we're almost full health now, and there's only one left. We're going to be entering his next phase. His next phase is going to be a bit stronger, obviously, and it's going to be a bit more aggressive. He's going to make copies of himself, and some of the copies are going to come down from below. But if you stand on the slime mount, if any of the bottom ones contact you, you'll pop up into the air and you'll be away from danger. You will take a little bit of damage still, but you won't take anywhere near as much damage as you would have. And you have to slow him down by hitting the correct one. And the correct one is hard to spot sometimes, especially as you get closer to the last stages of the boss. But if you hit the right one, you're going to slow him down. He won't be able to reach you. And if he does reach you, then you'll pop up into the air with the slime mount. And yeah, nice little tactic here for you guys to learn as well. This is master mode, just so you know. So that's why there's a third phase. And the third phase, he starts to get really fast. That's when you really need the slime mount to pop you out of the way. As you can see here, I'm bouncing up and down, and they kind of move away from me when I do. So that is the Brain of Cthulhu complete. So that was pretty okay. And yeah, you can fight him on the surface, which is fantastic, which is great for your playthroughs. So we got the little goodie bag, and we're going to get the most important item from the Crimson as well, and the most important item from Brain of Cthulhu, which is the Brain of Confusion. And when we get that, we are going to have more iframes, invincibility frames, and we're going to confuse our enemies as well, which is fantastic. So one of the better accessories in the game by far. And I think it's 100% drop chance as well, so you only have to kill the Brain of Cthulhu once to get it. I've never not had it if it isn't 100% drop chance. So it has a chance to create illusions and dodge an attack, temporarily increases critical chance after dodge, may confuse nearby enemies after being struck. Fantastic item, and especially the dodge of an attack. You can pretty much dodge attacks that are going to one-shot you in this game, like the Moonlord laser, for example. So it's fantastic. Today I want to show you guys how to get the rainbow gun in Terraria. Now to get the rainbow gun, you need to get the hallowed biome key, bring it to the dungeon, open the hallowed biome chest, and pretty much you have the rainbow gun. I'll show you how to use it once we get it. Now, just a few things. I'm using a mob farm as usual. Make sure you check out our other video on mob farms if you want to see how to make one. And we're using pearlstone blocks to turn the area into hallowed biome. The key can drop from any enemy that is able to drop coins. So don't forget that if an enemy can drop coins, it can drop the key. It doesn't matter if they belong in the biome or not, as long as the biome belongs to the hallow. Technically, you can do this on the surface, but this is also a great way to get Souls of Night, as long as you are in the underground, or the caverns, I should say. So almost all enemies here have a chance to drop in Souls of Night alongside the key. But we're farming for one main thing, and that is the key right now. So hopefully we drop that anytime soon. It's a pretty rare drop, and to use the key, you have to have Clentaminator defeated in your world. You go to the dungeon and you open up the hallowed chest, as I mentioned before. You get the rainbow gun, and then, well, as I said, I'll show you how to use the rainbow gun as well. So these bats are usually the ones that drop the rainbow key or the hallowed key, and there we have the hallowed key right there. So we have that now. So we're going to be going to the dungeon in a moment. Let's just pick up the last of the Souls of Night for now, or Souls of Light, I should say. And any other keys that are lying around. No point in leaving any waste. You can actually also get the Rod of Discord here too, but it's a very rare drop, so I'm going to have to show you that in a different video. So into the dungeon we go. We're going to go down and we're going to find the hallowed chest. Now, when it comes to ranking the items that you can get from biome chests in Terraria, I'd say the hallowed gun or the rainbow gun is probably the second best item, and it's pretty much because it has a lot of utility. What I like to do with the rainbow gun is I like to shoot it, especially against a boss that's like static. So for example, Golem, and they just sit in the rainbow, take damage while you switch to your other weapon, and pretty much use a different weapon to do your main source of damage. And then whenever the rainbow gun wears out, pretty much just shoot it again, reset it, and then go back to your other weapon. And hopefully you'll have had enough mana collected by the time you run out of rainbow gun to shoot it again. Just a quick thing, by the way, I wanted to just show you, this dungeon can be quite difficult after Clentaminator. So it takes a lot of damage to kill some of the enemies in here, as you just saw a few moments ago. Be very careful going into the dungeon after Clentaminator to go collect your rainbow gun. This is the chest that you're looking for, the little blue and yellow one. And we're just going to open that up and see what's inside. There's a few other goodies in here as well, but we're looking mostly for the rainbow gun itself. And we're just going to pop that into, like, I usually put it on slot 4 because I'm going to move over to slot 4, use the rainbow gun, and then move back to my main weapon at that time. So I don't usually have it in, like, slot 1 or 2. Which way do you guys have your weapons, by the way? Do you have your weapon in 1 and pickaxe in 2? Or do you have your pickaxe in 1 and weapon in 2? Let me know in the comment section. Anyway, as you can see, the rainbow stays there for a while. So it just sits there and deals damage to anything that gets into the rainbows. And it's very useful against enemies that are not very mobile. And we actually have, for example, the bones coming in here. He's quite mobile, but once you kind of knock him back and juggle him a little bit, he'll just sit right in the rainbow and he'll take so much extra damage because of it. And now we have a paladin as well. The paladins are super strong, as most of you guys know already. And him sitting in that rainbow is really going to help to just do a lot of DPS. Look at the damage that we're doing. He has so much bloody health. And then as soon as the rainbow gun goes off, take it back out again, put down a new one, and just wait. And if we move the paladin out of the rainbow, we're going to shoot it again, and it's going to allow us to make a new one. It'll replace the old one. We're going to try and get this guy, or all of the enemies if possible, into this little rainbow section so that they take constant damage. It would be nice if we could get to the left side of this whole thing. Shoot another one and take out a lot of these rocketeers. But we will wait now and see if we can get this paladin to move back over to our left. Come on over here. Yeah, there we go. And now if we shoot the rainbow gun again, there we go. Perfect. So today I want to show you guys how to farm Souls of Night in Terraria. And Souls of Night in Terraria drop from the Crimson or Corruption biome as long as you're in the cavern lair. So what I've done here is I've set up a mob farm, and I showed you how to make a simple mob farm in another video, which I will link up above. But for now, we are going to try and show you how to get Souls of Night to drop. And this isn't technically an AFK farm because there are some enemies that can go through blocks. So I would try and pay attention to the screen when you're doing this. But you don't have to do anything. You can just sit here, maybe go on your phone, chill, watch some TikTok, whatever. So when it comes to the Souls of Night, they're useful for many things. You can make a special key that you put into a wooden chest to create a Crimson or Corrupted Mimic. And you can also make a lot of the other like boss spawners with Souls of Night as well. So there's a few things that you need Souls of Night for, and you're not going to need that many of them, but it would be nice to farm a good few. For example, I have, how many on me? I have 4 on me, so I'm probably going to need to get that up to about 99 or 100. Let's turn off auto pause so that we can let these guys die while we talk. I'm going to put down a bone platform as well, and candles so we can increase spawn rate. With the Corruption and Crimson, the spawn rate is already increased already. And the most important thing when it comes to farming Souls of Night is you have to be in the cavern lair. So what you want to do is you want to go into the cavern lair, and you want to make your mimic farm, or make your farm, sorry, out of Crimson blocks or Corruption blocks. So this area, for example, wasn't Crimson when I first arrived. It was just a normal snow biome. And because I have so many blocks in the area, it turned to Crimson. And any enemies that can drop money, pretty much, can drop Souls of Night. Now, there are a few exceptions to that. Usually, when it comes to Souls of Night, you're looking at the bats, you're looking at the slimes, and you're looking at just anything that's kind of squishy. That's usually the rule of thumb anyway. But just sit here, and enemies are going to drop Souls of Night. Not every enemy is going to drop it 100% of the time. it's kind of like a percentage chance, but you'll have plenty. I'd recommend getting a couple of hundred from this farm. You don't need that many Souls of Night in your playthrough, and it's just good to have plenty ready so you don't have to keep coming back and doing this over and over again. But if you want more Souls of Night for other things, of course, then just keep coming back. Just sit here and, as I said, look at your phone while you're waiting for Souls of Night to spawn, and just jump up to collect them. You can also jump out to collect them, of course. Depends on what part of the game you're in. Most of the enemies in here aren't that difficult. So because they're not that difficult, you could just jump out. And here's an example of one of the ones that go through the blocks. And yeah, that's why you don't want to be completely AFK here. These, what are they called? Floaty grosses can be a bit of a pain. It's always good to have a good summon with you. I have the spider staff, which is protecting me, of course. But unfortunately, the spider isn't that aggressive when it comes to enemies that are above it, so it doesn't leave my side. Whereas if you have the dragon, Stardust Dragon, then it'll go around the area above you and start killing things for you up there, instead of you having to sit next to it down here in your little cavern. And I'm actually taking a lot of damage here, so let's heal up. I'm spending too much time talking and not enough time protecting myself from these enemies. Another thing that's handy about doing one of these cavern layers mob farms is you have the Ecor. You can actually farm Ecor as well down here. And that means that you can start making some pretty good damage items, particularly when it comes to Ecor bullets. And you can just farm those because they're not something that you usually want to go out of your way to farm, but it's really handy to have them. And since you're in the Crimson biome, you can also have a small chance of getting the Crimson Key as well. So that's also very handy. And actually, since I'm in the Frost biome as well, I could get the Frost Key from here too. So you have a chance of getting 2 different keys for better weapons. Now, technically, I already have the Vampire Knives, which I've showed you in another video. And if you want those, of course, you're going to need the Crimson Key. So this is useful. And just another thing to learn, and I think you've probably figured this out yourself, but just in case, if you ever want to change a biome to suit what you're farming, just make the mob farm out of the material from that biome. So hallowed blocks if you want to make a hallowed biome, crimson blocks if you want to make a crimson biome, corruption blocks if you want to make a corruption biome. Best of luck trying to make one of these out of sand, but if you want to make, for example, a desert biome, you can make one with these blocks. The only thing is you're going to need, I think it's around 2,500 blocks. So make a really big one of these, or put lots of blocks on each side as well, so that you actually end up with enough blocks to create the biome. So I'm just going to pop out here now and grab these Souls of Night. And as I said already, if you're finding that your enemies aren't spawning or the mobs aren't spawning that quickly, you can just jump out, clear the area on each side, reset the spawns, and then that way you can actually go back underneath and let the spawns start attacking again, because enemies are going to start spawning down here, which you're going to have to get rid of. Sometimes enemies are going to start spawning up above, which you can go get rid of as well. And yeah, just pop out every now and then, collect the Souls of Night, and also clear the area so that new enemies can spawn. Well, this is perfect timing. The solar eclipse is happening, so I'm going to leave you guys now and go deal with that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Let me know what you think of this, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much one last time, and ta-ta! Today I want to show you guys how to get the Crimson Biome Key in Terraria. And this is going to take ages for you to get, so make sure you have a nice little setup, and make sure you use battle potions, and make sure you use water candles. And while we're sitting here waiting for the biome key to drop, we'll go over a few things. So I want to make it easy for you to know what to do, and that is you need to get the Crimson Biome Key from the Crimson Biome. You can get it anywhere, and you can get it from any enemy that drops coins in the Crimson biome, which means it doesn't matter if it's, for example, mummies from the desert. You can get this item as long as you're in the Crimson biome. It doesn't matter where you are. You can get it on the surface, you can get it on the ground, anywhere. So what I like to do is I like to set up a mob farm, and I like to set up the mob farm using Crimson blocks. Now, if you're looking for any of the other equivalents, you just use the equivalent blocks. For example, if you want to make a hallowed biome for the key, for that key, then you make the same mob farm, but you make it out of pearlstone. You do the same thing if you want something from corruption. If you want to know how to make a mob farm, make sure you check out our video on how to set up an easy mob farm. They're very easy to set up. As you can see in front of you, it pretty much just has one way in, no way out, and the lava kills the enemies. One thing I would say is try to use an aggressive summon here. I'm using an item or a summon that it doesn't seem to be doing anything. It doesn't seem to be aggressive enough. So I'm going to switch over to the dragon, and if you're doing this kind of a little bit earlier game, because obviously I'm using late game items just for demonstration, then you probably should use something like the spider armor and the spider staff, simply because the spiders are super aggressive. You can use any other summon that's aggressive, as long as it'll go above and kill the enemies above you. Now, it took me about 2.5 hours of recording to get this damn key. So we're going to be here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the key, but at least you know how to get it now, and you can go off and do it. Maybe you can listen to this video while you're waiting for the damn thing to drop. If you are waiting 2.5 hours also, be patient. It will drop eventually. It has a very low drop rate. You will end up getting it as long as you're in a Crimson area. I like to make my Crimson biome farm in the desert. The reason why I do that is because not only will you get the Crimson biome key, you'll also get the desert biome key, which I don't usually use, but at least it's good to have. But you can also get items for the Ankh Shield, for example, and you get those just by staying here. You get the megaphone and the blindfold, for example, and you can also farm vertebrae here. It's just like a really good place to farm everything at once, alongside waiting for the Crimson biome key. Now, what does the Crimson biome key do? I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you already know, but for anyone who doesn't, it opens up the Crimson chest in the dungeon, and inside that dungeon, you'll get the vampire knives, which is one of the coolest items in Terraria. So I highly recommend you do this. Also, if you have enough Crimson blocks from making a Crimson biome in a corruption world, you can still get the vampire knives in a corruption world. You just have to create a Crimson biome, and I also have a video on that too, so you can have a look at that if you like, if you're stuck in a corruption biome. One thing that I just did there, and I'd recommend you do it regularly, is go from side to side. These items will despawn at some point, so if there's too many items on screen, you'll end up losing items that are slightly off the screen, and you don't want your key to be off the screen and then you miss out on it because it despawns. So check regularly. I usually check once every day, so I suppose once every day and once every night. So at 7:30 p.m. in game I check, and then around 4:30 in the morning time I check as well, just to see if the key has dropped outside of the field of view that I have. And as I said, it can despawn, so check regularly. Now, you can just sit here and you will be safe. There's a few enemies that go through walls, so if you're early enough game, hopefully your summon will take care of you, and maybe keep an eye on it. But you can go and make maybe a cup of tea, maybe some lunch or something while you're waiting. You could be here for a few hours waiting for this damn key. The key can drop multiple times, but there's only one chest in the world, so you can only open this chest once per world. You have to drop to a different world if you want to open another one for your friends, or if you are playing, say, 4-player and you all want vampire knives. Don't forget, you can only open the chest after Clentaminator has been defeated, which is pity because I kind of like to have the vampire knives as early as possible, and only getting them after Clentaminator seems a little bit weak. But you can use the vampire knives against Golem, you can use it against the Martial Madness, you can use it against other bosses, and you can use it during events as well. The reason why the vampire knives are so good is they give you lifesteal, and they shoot very quickly too. So you're going to be spamming vampire knives constantly regaining HP as you shoot, and pretty much it turns you into a vampire. And it doesn't literally now, but it's just because of the lifesteal, you feel like a vampire. Let's just say that. I actually can't wait for the new Terraria update, where you're going to be able to play a seed where you do in fact become a vampire. And if you have the vampire knives, I really hope something unique happens. Some sort of unique combination between being a vampire and having the vampire knives. That would be awesome if that happens. We'll see if Terraria decide to do that. If you have any questions about any of this, make sure you ask. I've covered a lot of different things, but the most important thing is lots of patience, wait underneath your little mob farm, which you're going to be able to make easily, and eventually it will drop. Pick up as many items as you can along the way, and best thing about this is you're going to make a lot of money. One thing I forgot to mention is, as you can see, my dragon keeps going down, killing enemies underneath me. It's very hard to avoid that in Terraria, but if it's happening, it means some of your enemies are spawning underneath you. You can go down regularly and check to see if any of them have dropped the key, but it's not necessary. You can just wait. I mean, there's usually only 1 or 2 enemies down there at a time anyway. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is the enemies up here on the surface. And that lava, by the way, that you can see, make sure you keep the lava level nice and low. It won't get any higher in this biome anyway, so you're safe there. But the thing is, coins will be destroyed if your lava is too high. So at the end of the day, you don't want that to happen. Oh, and there we go. We have the crimson key finally. As I said, it took 2.5 hours for this thing. And we are going to pick this up, and we're going to sacrifice our battle potions to have it in the top of our inventory. And that is what it looks like. The crimson key that will open the chest and allow me to get the vampire knives. Then you bring it to the dungeon and open that crimson chest. You can find it in there. If you keep looking around, it'll be very easy to spot because it'll be red. Today I want to show you guys how to make a crimson biome in a corruption world. And this works for the opposite as well. You can also make a corruption biome in a crimson world. First thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to be in hard mode for this. And you want to make a graveyard mini biome. To do that, you need to put down 7 or 8 gravestones until smoke starts to form in the area. You're going to want to have the dryad in the house that you're building the graveyard around, because she is the key to this. And you're just going to want to put these down and go to the dryad and collect the corruption seeds or the crimson seeds, depending on which way you are doing this. They're quite cheap, so buy a lot of them. It actually takes a lot of corruption blocks and a lot of crimson blocks to make a biome, so make sure you get plenty of these. Just keep adding them until you see the corruption or crimson enemies spawning, depending on which one you're trying to make. I usually isolate a grass biome for this, and the grass biome, to isolate it, as I said, is to put pretty much a 6 to 7 block hole. I usually go all the way down to hell on either side of the isolated block, and then you have your natural normal grass on top. If you want to see how to isolate areas from corruption or crimson, make sure you check out our corruption crimson video on that topic. So we're going to put these crimson seeds into the grass, and the grass is going to start turning red. We want to have a lot of blocks or a lot of crimson grass on the screen at the same time, which means it's not going to be just enough to put it on the surface. We're going to have to really dig it into the area. It's going to take time for this to start spreading as well. If you're in a rush, you can take some steps to speed it up, but I would recommend starting your crimson, then going away and doing something else for a while, maybe a few bosses or maybe some grinding some items, and then come back and the crimson will have spread in this block even further. And pretty much the more crimson seeds you put in, the more deep it will have grabbed it, and the quicker it will turn into a crimson biome. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here, and as you can see, we're starting to get some crimson going, where the grass is starting to spread itself. Usually what I like to do is I like to put some dirt blocks in, and after adding the dirt blocks, adding some crimson seeds to those dirt blocks. So just to be clear, it's dirt blocks that turn to crimson, and obviously grass can be turned into crimson grass, but it is mostly dirt blocks that you're going to be using for this. And we're just going to use the crimson on these. Once the crimson enemies start spawning, that's when you know that you have your crimson biome started, and we have some spawning off screen as we speak. So that means our crimson biome has begun. When it comes to the Brain of Cthulhu, if you're trying to if you're using the crimson biome to kill Brain of Cthulhu in your corruption world, you're going to need some vertebrae, and you're going to need some vicious powder, I believe it's called. And to create that, you're going to need the vertebrae itself, obviously, and you're going to need vicious mushroom in order to pretty much create the spawner for Brain of Cthulhu. To get those mushrooms, you're going to need to wait until they start growing on your crimson grass. Now, they take ages. This could take you a long time to get. So I would highly recommend just taking your time and waiting for the crimson or the vicious mushrooms to start spawning. The reason why I'm putting a graveyard here again is because graveyards increase spawn rate in the area, and we are looking for vertebrae, as many vertebrae as possible. And because of that, we want to have as many enemies as possible. Unfortunately, it's not a 100% drop rate, which means it's going to take a while to get those too. You are really looking at a bit of a grind here to get the vicious mushrooms and to get the vertebrae in order to spawn the Brain of Cthulhu. As I said, technically unnaturally in the world that you're in. And if you use water candles and battle potions, it increases the spawn as well. And luckily enough, we have a blood moon as well in this world coming up, so we're going to have even more spawn. But it still took ages to get the 2 items that are needed to spawn the Brain of Cthulhu. And there we go, we have the blood moon, graveyard, water candle. I don't have a battle potion activated, but you should really look into getting a battle potion activated for these. Then we are going to double check that we have everything. We have enough of the mushrooms to make the vicious powder, or we don't have enough, but we know that that's what we're looking for, since we have 2 already. And then we have the vertebrae as well, which is going to go together. When it comes to making the spawner for the Brain of Cthulhu, we need to go to one of the altars, which, don't forget, don't spawn in your crimson biome that you've created yourself. So you'll have to go to the corruption to get one of those altars. And now we have the spawner for Brain of Cthulhu. A lot of the stuff that you would normally get from a natural crimson world, you can't really get those in your naturally or your unnaturally created corruption biome or crimson biome. So you have to really grind for them and get them yourself. Now, obviously, Brain of Cthulhu in hard mode is easy peasy, but first of all, we're just fighting it, and second of all, we're looking for the Brain of Cthulhu's items, and also the fact that it will literally drop all of the crimson stuff that you want. So that's pretty handy as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, at this point of the game, I don't really need anything apart from his accessory that he gives you, which is, in my opinion, actually better than the worm scarf in the current patch. So it's quite useful. I want to show you guys how to mine corruption or crimson blocks early game in Terraria. This is before you have the pickaxe power to mine it yourself. And have you ever been to the corruption or crimson and there's those blocks that are just in the way and you just want to get rid of them, but you can't because you don't have the pickaxe power? Or you're a brand new player and you don't know how the crimson or corruption works yet. Well, you go to the Dryad and you buy purification powder. To get the Dryad, you just need to kill Eye of Cthulhu and have a house for the Dryad to live in. And then you go to where the corruption or crimson is getting in your way, purify it, and then mine it. I'll show you later on how to do this with non-late game gear, or just to show you that it actually is possible, because I have a pickaxe that's actually quite powerful already in this footage. But the most important thing is purification powder. Spray it onto the crimson blocks, and now they turn into normal stone, and just keep doing that. This can be very useful to get rid of blocks early game that are in your way, but it's very useful as well to do a few things inside the Crimson or Corruption itself. So, have you ever wanted to use one of the altars early game? You probably won't need to do this, but if you ever decide that you want one of the altars early game, you can use the Purification Powder to get through to one of the altars. But if you're looking for spawners for Eater of the Worlds or Brain of Cthulhu, that's where this really comes in handy, because most people use dynamite to blow the walls up to get to the spawners for the 2 bosses. But you have a risk of actually spawning the boss by accident if you do that. So with this little trick, you can have a bit more control over how many hearts you destroy and when you actually hit the go button on the boss fight. So we're going to come down here and then we're going to purify this area, and that way we can get in to the spawner without having any crimson. We can use a hammer to destroy the spawner. Brilliant. Just real quick, I'm going to go and grab a cactus pickaxe so that you can see that it works with the cactus pickaxe. It works with all the pickaxes. I just want to show you guys that it works with one that doesn't naturally get rid of crimson blocks, because I'm pretty sure people will think that I was only able to do this because of the pickaxe power that I had. So here's the cactus pickaxe. A bit slower, obviously, than the Pixo or the Pickaxe X, whichever one you're using late game. Today I want to show you guys how to get the vampire knives in Terraria. And the vampire knives are in the crimson chest in the dungeon, and you need the crimson key to unlock the chest. I've shown you in a previous video how to farm for the crimson key, which I'll link here if you haven't seen it already. And I like to mark the crimson chest with torches so that I know where to find it when I am coming back towards the dungeon. So here's the crimson key, which we farmed in the method that I've already showed you. And I'm not going to show you farming it again because there's no point in having that twice. So we're going to pick this key up and we're going to go and get the vampire knives. Pretty much, if you want to farm for the crimson key, by the way, crimson biome, kill any enemy that drops coins, and that way you'll be able to farm it. It's a very low drop, so you'll be waiting a while. Now, the reason why you want to get the vampire knives in the first place, obviously you can see that I have late game gear in this game. That's just for farming purposes. The vampire knives are way before you get the Zenith, just so you know. And you can open the crimson chest in the dungeon after you kill Plantera. So the vampire knives are mostly for the pillars, which are very good against the pillars. Martian Madness, Golem, which it's very good against Golem as well. And you can also use it against the cultists. Against Moonlord itself, not really. Against the Empress of Night, not really. I would mostly use vampire knives against the bosses that I mentioned or the events that I mentioned. It's also very good against the Eclipse. And also as a farming tool. It's one of the best farming weapons in the game because you have so much sustainability. And the reason why you have so much sustainability is because you get lifesteal. It's one of the only weapons in the game that can provide you with lifesteal, and the lifesteal is actually built into the weapon. So as you're attacking enemies, you pretty much gain health. You don't have to worry about health as much. Now, this item used to be way more powerful than it is these days. So unfortunately, they nerfed it a lot. And this item used to be one of the things that you pretty much had to get in your playthrough if you wanted to farm all the items. Otherwise, it would take ages. Fortunately now, because it's nerfed, you're not going to be able to get as much use out of it. And one of the nerfs that they did was they nerfed it against bosses. You can't gain as much health as quickly against bosses as you used to be able to. I'm not actually sure if you can gain as much health from normal enemies as well, because as you can see here, I'm gaining like 1 to 2 HP every couple seconds when I hit enemies. I remember gaining health way quicker than this before. Like literally as I'm attacking, I'm out DPSing and out healing my opponent's attacks. But then again, back when vampire knives were like the big thing that everyone got in their playthroughs, I was on like normal mode or classic mode. I wasn't on master mode because this is a master mode playthrough. So as you can see, I'm not doing very much damage to this paladin. Now these vampire knives have not been changed to legendary or anything yet. So change those to legendary and they're going to be doing a lot more damage. I do usually use vampire knives against paladins to farm against them in general. So even in master mode, so they are good against the paladins. You just need to buff them first. Having the basic version isn't great. And honestly, the dungeon gets really difficult after Planter is defeated. So as you can see, I'm barely getting away with not dying here. But if you get hit fully by one of these enemies, you're going to take a lot of damage because just the damage output that they have, especially these sorcerer guys, they're a pain in the ass. Anyway, once I have killed him, I can move on to some of the easier enemies that are in the area and just show you the health regen. As you can see, top right, I am regen in health, but it's like, first of all, I have a fire debuff. Second of all, it's just 1 to 2 per heal, so not as good as it used to be, but still viable, especially as a farming item. Don't pass on the vampire knives if you find the crimson key. And farming from the crimson key is not that bad if you use the method that I showed you in our previous how to farm the crimson key video. Today I want to show you guys how to spawn and kill Empress of Light in Terraria. So the first thing we're going to need is a prismatic lacewing butterfly from the hallowed biome. And you capture that using pretty much just a normal net, but you have to allow it to spawn, of course, and try not to kill it by accident. They're pretty rare, so make sure you use any buffs you can to increase minion spawn. You can try and get these in your own biome that you make yourself, and if you want to know how to make your own biome, make sure you check out our other video on the topic. You want to go to your biome, and using pearl stone blocks, obviously, and then when it spawns between 7:30 and 12 o'clock midnight, then you can go and spawn the Empress of Light. Now don't forget, after 12 o'clock the butterflies don't spawn anymore, so you have to be careful not to miss your opportunity. So what we're going to be using for the Empress of Light here today is we're going to be using the Stardust Dragon Staff, and we're going to be using the legendary Star Wrath, and we're going to be using Hallowed Armor along with the Brain of Confusion item from the Brain of Cthulhu. As you can see, oh yeah, to spawn the Empress of Light themselves, you need to let the butterfly go and then attack the butterfly and kill it. As you can see here, I wasted a couple of them, and I did that technically on purpose to show you that it can be wasted if you're not in the hallowed biome. Make sure that you're in the hallowed biome if you want to spawn the Empress of Light. Now, I mentioned the armor that I'm using is pretty much based around dodging her attacks. So I'm using the Brain of Confusion from the Brain of Cthulhu, and I'm using the Hallowed Armor. When you attack her with the Hallowed Armor, you actually dodge the next attack, so it's very useful, especially since she's so strong. I'm using a lot of buffs. Now you can do this a lot easier if you have better weapons. I'm using slightly lower level weapons in order to just show you how to do this from a you're not overpowered point of view. You can become overpowered from this and actually kill her very easily using the Zenith. But the most important item in this is the tree. The tree mount that I'm on is pretty much the fastest mount in the game. Build a sky bridge and literally run from left to right on the sky bridge as fast as you can while trying to hit her at the corner of the screen. When she shoots her lasers, a lot of the time you'll pretty much dodge a lot of them because you'll be so fast they won't reach you. And obviously heal up if you can whenever they do actually hit you, which won't be that often. He's going to do a lot of damage to you. And as you can see, we got really close to dying ourselves, but we killed her. The tree is the most important thing though. The tree is only available in master mode. So if you are in master mode, use the tree. And I'll show you how to get the tree in another video. And if you can't get the tree, or you don't have time to get the tree, you can get the goat skull and use the goat. That's pretty easy to get. You get that from the Wall of Flesh in master mode only. And if you're not in master mode, if you're in any other mode, use the unicorn mount. That's the best mount that you can get in all of the other game modes. So use the tree if you can get it. It's the fastest one in the game. Use the goat if you can't get the tree for whatever reason. And the goat's a pretty common drop from Wall of Flesh. And If you are in expert mode or normal mode or journey mode and you don't have master mode turned on for journey mode, you pretty much use the unicorn mount. So those are the mounts that you use. And the trick is pretty much, or not the tricks, but the strategy is pretty much run from left to right on a sky bridge, and she will be able to hit you, but you'll have enough time to recover and to heal, especially if you use the armor that I've been using in this. Now, obviously, I'm using a lot of buffs. I'm going to show you what kind of buffs you should use for Terraria in general in future videos. I'm not going to show you individual buffs. Use as many as you can, pretty much. Like the 100% make sure that you are prepared for the fight. It's a tough fight, even if she is quite predictable with her attacks. And honestly, one of the most fun fights in the game. Of course, there is Empress of Night daytime. Now that's a different story, which I'll show you in the future. Today I want to show you guys how to get the unicorn mount in Terraria. And the unicorn mount is one of the best mounts in Terraria itself. It's one of the best mounts in expert mode in particular, and any of the modes below that. But in master mode, it's not as good as some of the mounts that are only available in master mode. So everyone should go for the unicorn mount in their normal playthroughs. And to get the unicorn mount, I'd recommend going to a hallowed biome. And if you want to make a hallowed biome yourself in any part of the world, I can show you how to do that by going to how to create your own biome in Terraria. But in general, if you are in the hallowed biome and you are getting the spawns of unicorns, then the item will drop eventually. The item is called the Blessed Apple. So you're waiting for the Blessed Apple to drop, and while you're waiting for the Blessed Apple to drop, you can get a lot of unicorn horns as well, which are very, very valuable in Terraria for many different things. So highly recommend farming for both at the same time. I would almost say that if you are farming for unicorn horns in general, just keep farming until you get the Blessed Apple as well, and use that as your main mount as soon as you are in kind of like the mid to late game. Because once you hit hard mode, or once you hit the mechanical bosses, for example, the unicorn mount is fantastic. The unicorn mount can be used to take on the Martian Madness saucers, for example. It can be used to kill Moonlord. It can be used to kill any of the bosses that you spawn later on in the game that are up on the surface, and you can use a long sky bridge to fight. And the reason why the unicorn mount is so important is because it gets to its maximum speed a lot quicker than you can on your boots. The problem with turning and twisting in fights in Terraria is if you are only using your boots, you have to run a little bit before you can get to top speed. But the unicorn mount, as I said, gets pretty much straight away to maximum speed, and it's able to outrun most bosses. But the most important thing is, when you're outrunning most bosses in Terraria, you want to make sure they don't despawn. Now, Martian Madness saucers, for example, they do despawn if you go too far away from them. And if you're unlucky, the twins can also despawn if you kill the wrong one while the other one is outside of the screen. So the best thing about the unicorn mount is it's fast, but it's not fast enough to despawn everything. You still have to be careful with the twins, so just make sure you know how to stop them from despawning in general. But for example, Moonlord, since Moonlord doesn't despawn, you can just run left and right on a sky bridge using the unicorn mount, and you can pretty much do that all the way without him ever despawning, because he'll teleport towards you. Now, I kind of tried to show this in this footage as well. You know that you're looking for the Blessed Apple, so you don't need to wait to see it. But one thing I would say is this thing is very, very hard to get. It takes a while. It takes a lot of unicorns. Kill all the enemies that are off the screen whenever you can to try and reduce the amount of enemies that are taking up the spawns. Use a battle potion if possible, and use a water candle. You might be here for a while. It takes a while for this damn thing to drop, but once you get it, it'll be very, very worth it. Plus, farming the unicorn horns, as I said already, is very valuable. Farming pixie dust is very valuable. Pretty much farming in the hallowed biome in general is worth your while regardless of how long it takes. It will take a while, but once it drops, it's worth it. As you can see, there's a few of the Ankh Shield items dropping as well. So if you're trying to get the Ankh Shield as well, you can also farm for that. So there's a lot of different things that you can farm for at the same time while you're waiting for the Blessed Apple to drop. Now, I predict that if people are having trouble getting this thing, there are going to be people in the comment section telling me, I've killed hundreds of these unicorns and I still am getting the Blessed Apple. Am I doing something wrong? No, you just need to be patient. It takes a while. Sometimes it'll jump very quickly. I'm obviously not getting as much luck in this footage as you might get in your playthrough, but I highly recommend getting it regardless. As I said, the Blessed Apple is, in my opinion, the best mount, or the unicorn mount in general is the best mount in expert mode, normal mode, I suppose journey mode if you want to cancel or count that as well. But unfortunately in master mode, the unicorn mount is very important, but up to a certain point. And you can kind of get a better mount than the unicorn mount straight away in master mode 2, which I will show you in a future video. But because it drops from the wall of flesh, which kind of makes the unicorn mount obsolete if you're in master mode. But if you're in any of the other modes, as I said, the unicorn mount is very, very important. I'm actually farming a lot of different things here that you probably don't know that I'm trying to get the recipes for. I'm getting shark fins for the mega shark. As you can see, I'm still using the clockwork assault rifle. I'm getting the items for the Ankh Shield. I'm getting pixie dust. I'm getting unicorn horns. I'm getting all sorts of really handy equipment. You can even get the werewolf, the moon. So it's very, very good item, honestly, to try and farm for. Or just as I said already, the hallowed biome is very, very important to farm in general. And if you want to increase your spawn rate, as I said, kill all the little critters that are spawning on the side of your screen, because the enemies or the mobs in this game only spawn off the screen. That's one of the reasons, and I explained it in the video that I showed you earlier about how to create your own biome. One of the reasons why the pearl blocks on your screen are going off the screen. I want the unicorns to spawn off the screen and run towards me. So it's very important to make sure you maximize your spawn rates for these things and move a little bit from left to right. As you can see, I'm getting unicorns that are coming towards me as I kind of move left and right. So they do spawn, and sometimes they spawn in packs if you're very lucky. And when it comes to daytime, nighttime, I always find that I get way more unicorns during the daytime than I do the nighttime. So you could probably go away and come back. You technically can get unicorns pretty late into the night, but a lot of other spawns will take up the spawn rate of the unicorn. So we're going to kill this one now, and hopefully it drops it. Finally, we got the bloody apple. That's what it looks like. If you didn't see it, I already have it in the thumbnail, so you'll be able to see it from there anyway. But it's nice to actually have the drop in the footage. And now we have the unicorn mount, so I'm going to let you see how quickly it reaches maximum speed. You can use asphalt blocks in order to get its speed up, and then you can have a moonwalking unicorn all the time, and you can shoot from it. As you can see, you can jump with it, and it's pretty much the perfect mount for anyone who's playing expert mode or normal mode. Well, thank you very much for watching today's video and today's compilation. I hope you liked it. I hope it helped you have something to do while you've been focusing on your Terraria or whatever you're doing in the background. Let me know if you have any questions, and let me know what you think of today's compilation. I'll make more if you think that they're fun to listen to in the background. I also want to say that we have an individual video for pretty much every one of the videos you just saw in this main compilation. So if there's anything you want to double check on, then obviously use the timestamps in this video, or you can pretty much go to the individual videos and have a look at those. They're pretty much the same, but you might get some different insights in the comments, for example, from users who have watched the video and gave their own tips. And yeah, best of luck with Terraria. Thank you very much once again for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this, and actually let me know in the comment section as well, whereabouts are you in your playthrough of Terraria? It would be nice to know what have you done with the Crimson, Corruption, and the Hallowed Biomes. I'd also like to know a little bit about your own style of playthrough. Do you like to do Crimson? Do you like to do Corruption yourself? And what is the benefits for you of dealing with the Crimson, Corruption, and Hallowed biomes in the game? So thank you very much one last time. I'll see you again in the next video, and enjoy the rest of your day.